that is in the public domain. And it is now public knowledge that Moi High School Kabarak was the top school nationally, although Ministry of Education did not release official ranking of schools. Comparisons of the school's performance with other top academic giants indicate that Moi Kabarak is on the lead. According to the results released on Monday morning, the school had a mean score of 10.43, with all its 401 candidates qualifying for direct entry to university. Ken Gashui reports.
Monday morning, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu released the 2023 KCSE results in Uasin Gishu County. Although Machogu did not announce the best candidates and schools nationally, Moi High School Kabarak has been established to be at the top of the national ranking of schools.
I believe that we are the top. We have tried to get information here and there. Looking at what we have seen from all the other schools that are at our league, we are the best, actually.
Moi High School Kabarak, which had a candidature of 401, scored a mean grade of 10.43. The results indicating the school's continued rise over the last 4 years.
We had a mean of 10.43, which is a B+, and a performance index improvement of 0.30 compared to the 2022 class, with A plane being 62, we scored 155 A minuses, and then 102 B+. And I can say that our least students who are four of them got C+.
Top 6 candidates among the 62 who scored a mean grade of A plane included Mwangi Ann Wanjiru, Cheruyot Bernard, Mshindi Henry, Ryan Mumanyi, Shiko Kariuki, and Murigi Wanjiru, all of whom had 84 points. Best performed subjects at the school being agriculture and physics.
Mimi ni mwalimu wa physics na idara ya sayansi. A total of 136 students attained a grade of A, and we had another number 120 attaining a grade of A-. I can attribute these results, one, to leadership.
Mwalimu wa agriculture. And we thank God for the excellent result in the subject. Actually, at the beginning of the year, we set a target of 12.00, and I am happy that we attained that target.
Some of the top candidates at the school saying its flexible schedule fits all students with different academic capabilities.
In Kabarak, they allow for either morning or late at night studies. I'm a morning person, so I used to wake up in the morning, and then I come to class, and then also during the day the teachers had very good revision programs which helped us to pass.
I was also a morning person, so I would get up really early. The school allowed for us to be in class as early as 3 a.m, so I would take advantage of that. I would come, do my studies. We had remedials in the morning. The teachers were always present and made sure that all of us were on course.
The board of directors of the school promising to continue supporting and giving guidance to ensure its learners have a conducive learning environment.
That the board of directors is determined to provide all the resources that are required to deliver quality academic services in Moi High School Kabarak. In terms of infrastructure, we have sufficient infrastructure, and it is the role of the board under the chairmanship of Senator Gideon Moi to ensure that all the required infrastructure is in place. And we have sufficient labs, we have sufficient human resource in terms of qualified, competent teaching staff.
Ken Gashuhi, KTN News.
All right, Kabarak High School there. We continue pace with that conversation on academia. And before we took a short break, I think we had Irungu Houghton commenting on it as well. And I wonder, how does it feel when everyone makes it, to university? You as a teacher, as a principal, I think it pays off the hard work that you've really put in, and it gives such a very good feeling down deep in the deepest recesses of your heart that you have everyone at least who's attained the mean grade and done even better nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously for us as the panel, we have to start by just congratulating all the students, the teachers, the schools, the environment that produces the quality of the results that we've seen this year. We also, I think it's important to recognize this is the last year of KCSE, and therefore we're moving to a new system. It's probably the most disruptive education reform since independence in many ways. We also, it's not true that everybody gets to university, or for that matter, everybody gets to university and is able to find a job or to find a footing within the economy. The reality is that for many of the people that have done very well, they will struggle to find employment. They will struggle to find, higher learning opportunities. It's very worrying that countries like Nigeria have begun to challenge, the quality of our education and our qualifications. And it's not just that Kenya for many years has been recognized as being in the top 10 performing countries on education basis. I think we're 6th. The first is Seychelles, and I think the second is Tunisia. But we are essentially a country in which a government has declared that one of its primary strategies for employment is to export the brightest and the cleverest of our students or our workforce. And therefore, if there is no confidence in our qualifications, then that strategy is going to fail by default. But I think the more important thing is really thinking about the quality of education at 2 levels. One is, are people succeeding? Are they developing core competencies in an area? But I think the area that we've not discussed, and obviously at a time like this will probably not be on the front page, is whether our schools are fit in a way that they're preparing children to go beyond the social media tensions that we're seeing. I mean, we had 2 studies last year as Amnesty International, and TikTok, the social media platform, has been a major disruptor in terms of the self-esteem, particularly of girls, but of girls and boys. And it's not quite clear yet that the Ministry of Education has a strategy, except ban, to be able to equip people to use the social media platforms that they're using. The second thing is really the issue of child safety. Something like 60% of the children that are in conflict with the law, or rather go to our law courts for justice, are cases of sexual and gender-based violence. Our schools need to find ways of making the environment safer against predatory teachers, predatory parents, and relatives. And I think that's the other dimension to this that sometimes we forget. It's not just about the grades, it's also about the social, the social status of children as they go through that school.
And I also read from one of the publication, international ones, I think, was it the New Times, that even in New York now, we had a government which is declaring the fact that we have the social media platform like Facebook introducing the encryption of messages. That right now you cannot really follow up what your child actually is communicating with anyone. It is so encrypted, and so they're raising concerns of the pedophiles and people taking advantage of the young ones as well. And you cannot follow the trail and the threads of the messaging that has been there. I don't know what will be your contribution, because I know also you've been following the story, especially regarding the moderators of Facebook, where there was, I don't know what was the outcome. You can also fill us in.
I mean, 2022 was the year where I think it became clear to Amnesty and many organizations, and probably even the public and educational policymakers, that we needed to think very carefully about the social media platforms, both in terms of the way that they're constructed around advertising and algorithms, but also the child safety issues that are involved. Children have access to the internet. I mean, that's not going to change. That will just expand, and we should encourage it. The question is whether we're preparing children to be able to navigate the spaces that are available on the internet, and secondly, whether we are compelling social media platforms to regulate themselves to ensure that people under the age of majority essentially don't have access to harmful content. And particularly content that is violent, that is sexually abusive. And I think that is another issue. The other area, of course, is gambling. Many of our school children, like their parents, are just gambling recklessly. and borrowing in order to be able to do that. So I think these will not go away. So I think the first thing that will not help is for education policymakers to become ostriches, either put their heads in the soil, or secondly, do outright bans, because ultimately you cannot enforce bans in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's hear just from Professor Kagwanja. I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that.
I wanted to basically add, put some intellectual context to some of these things. I think in terms of producing a generation, it means investing more on time. It also means, a focused attention on quality. And quality cannot be determined unless there are specific instruments of measuring that quality. And therefore the progress is measured that way. Today, I think we can comfortably say that we have what we call microwave generation. Mm-hmm. And the microwaving is what we are now complaining about social media. I'm not talking about the machine itself that will produce, will make you a bowl of rice in 2 seconds or 2 minutes. You have a bowl of rice which is supposed normally to take about 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. What is happening is that we have a microwave mindset. That's what the problem is. Microwave mindset. You want to go to the university and you want to get your PhD in 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And we have this debate in the corridors of the university. I would like to finish this thing within two or whatever. Then somebody want to do masters in months and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is not the traditional way of making things mature up. The same case when we come to our mindset in terms of getting rich. Mm-hmm. Getting money in your pocket is not wealth. Money and the mind have to merge. You have to merge money and mind, because it is this merging that produces a cultured person. That therefore you not spend your night taking Hennessy or Heineken or whatever it is that you take. Just to demonstrate to the world that you are doing very well. You not put your hand on the table in a restaurant to show that you have a 3 million watch. You'll not drive these flashy cars just because you want people to notice you, that you have a flashy car. So it is beginning to eat into our psyche as human beings. It is beginning to erode our ethos as a nation, because you're not getting things for for what they are supposed to be, but you're getting them for display, for show off. And you want to get them very fast. And incidentally, we begin to reward those who are doing that. You reward those people who get their PhDs in 3 years. It doesn't matter what quality it was or whether they have any impact on their fellow students, because that's what it is supposed to. This collegial thing. You begin to reward those who are doing best in TikTok, which is a moment's glory. It's Gugu Athiongo who used to write about the Mercedes funeral. Yes. And the argument was that it doesn't matter how quality of life, as long as I can have one moment in the Mercedes. Yes. That doesn't matter. So the point here is the microwave mindset is what is finishing this country. And how can it be dealt with? It can be dealt with through education. It is only education that insists on quality. You've got to go through it. You cannot become a soldier unless you train thoroughly and carry those rucksacks and you walk up the mountains and discipline. And you have discipline. You can never produce a soldier unless you do that. And it's the same case with the professionals. For example, the police force. You hear that somebody want to go up the ranks very quickly, and one of the way of doing it is basically going through the academics and so on. But then the other people would say, no. This is a different area. I had that conversation with the late Kaiseri. This is not the way we go about it. You've got to go through the discipline. You've got through the ranks. These others are additions to your achievement in this particular profession. So our education need to go back to the basics again. You cannot have education that does not measure quality. I know you want to be very democratic. You don't want to say it is Kabarak that won. You don't want to say it's Alliance that won. The first thing I came here, I asked my friend Dr. Hanenje, I can't see Alliance because I went inside and did not go to the cover. You can see, no, the alliance is here, or alliance girls and alliance boys, because this is what we know, that they offer quality education. And that brand, that platinum, is what makes us compete. Every kid in Garissa, kid in Murang'a, kid in Wembuye, they want to go to alliance. And you know, when they go there, they have this confidence, and they work hard as a teacher. So,
and of course, they served different breakfast.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but I know for sure your mindset. The mindset is the proper mindset that you want to achieve, and you know that you cannot achieve without hard work.
Indeed.
Hard work and achievement go together. But TikTok tells you that you can be famous in a minute by just by posting in a certain way, not doing anything. You just post and you TikTok it, and there you go. You are famous. In Facebook, you put in a comment or something that is sometimes very angry, but
it goes viral.
It goes viral, and therefore you're famous.
And with that, I want to just, of course, we won't be never gazing on that particular talk. We'll head on now to what we want to discuss this morning. But it's very important as you raise it, even with the social media, because we've also glorified other things, as we can see, of the socialites, that now it's become accommodated and accepted in society, because you can come and work and people can actually glorify you. We're talking about Wahoo, the socialite, the murder that happened here in South B. It's a security issue. And of course, people sort of are embracing that to be normal. The Vera Sidikas of this world normalize it. You know, you can actually have it. We don't want to use that particular name that we know it, but now it's become a socialite. And through the social media, we are accepting this sort of, should I call it idiocracies that was there before, that society will actually raise eyebrows. Now it's something that has just become normal, that if my daughter now will be on social media and she's getting the numbers, no matter what she does on that particular social media, the posing, the things that she does, that is okay.
That's normalizing the abnormal.
Normalizing the abnormal.
I think let me challenge us a little bit, because, you know, my mother used to wear miniskirts and actually was at KBC as a news anchor many years ago, Nyagudie. And that was the socialite in the 1960s, right? So every generation has its socialites. The current period that we're in has a particular type of socialite, right? It's not that they have never been socialites. They have always been socialites. That would be my first pushback. But I think what's concerning for many of us is really that, you know, the glamour, the PR, the whatever is now moving way ahead of the reality. And if I can bring it back to an issue that, you know, is really an issue of national, you know, significance at the moment, we've just released a visa-free regime that actually has imposed visas on almost every African country and increased the cost of the visas. We are, you know, if there is an issue, I think you called it, what did you say? You said there is a microwave, that we have microwave children. Yeah. We have a microwave nation. We have a microwave government. We have a government that is really desperately trying to keep the interest and the commitment of the public. And it allows it, I guess it facilitates, it enables even the introduction of policies that are branded in a particular way, but in reality are the opposite. And we've been a laughing stock across the continent. I don't want to switch topics too radically, but I think it's important to recognize that actually this
was actually in the pike. It was coming down the pike. We should be discussing. Yes, it was coming. It's not that you've preempted, but it's good you have done that.
It's really important to just recognize that it's not just the socialites. It's actually being performed. We have a performative culture as a nation, and I think we have to challenge it. We have to ask people to be authentic and to be accountable to the truth that is really behind that.
Right. On what was informing that was the fact that we are seeing, especially on page 11 of the Star, that there's confusion, dismay, and high cost, which is greeting Kenya's visa-free initiative and defending the move to ETA. The state says the process is less costly, quick, and real-time. And it says foreign travelers to Kenya have termed the newly introduced electronic travel authorization, that is the ETI, which has replaced visa requirements as tedious, complex, and costly. Several talked to the Star and shared their disappointment on social media, accusing the government of fake promises, accusations vehemently denied by the states. Requirements for ETA are far worse, I should say, than the previous visa regime. This is my 6th visit. Kenya is a beautiful country, but the state should not lie to visitors. A German tourist, this is Birgit Scovia, who arrived in Diani on Saturday, said this. She cites too much paperwork, a 72-hour wait for approval, and a hidden application fee of $34, among other stiff-neck bureaucracy experience. And I think, Mweshimo, you should pick up on this, because this falls directly actually under you or on your table as or defends the Foreign Relations Committee legislator.
Well, I think first of all it's too early to give a considered response to this new policy, but obviously there are some teething problems. I don't see any problem whatsoever in having an electronic registration system, both for data collection as well as for security. But what I'm particularly concerned, and I've had in the media, is the fact that Germany and people from the West do not have a problem. They've always been able to come to Kenya. They had to pay a particular fees. And I think the $30 is more like a processing fees. It's not a big deal. The country really needs to earn some revenue from the visitors who are coming here, and one can justify that. But the problem is with African countries. The idea that the president wanted to open up our borders, not only for wealthy countries that can come here, people from wealthy countries that can come here, but the problem is with African countries, our neighbors, our immediate African neighbors. And a lot of people are saying that even countries that had a visa-free relationship with Kenya, with this new process, new policy, they have to apply, and they have to pay the fees, which defeats the purpose. For example, we have an exchange relationship with South Africa, reciprocal relationship. Now the South Africans cannot come here without filling these forms, waiting for 72 hours, and then paying the fees. I think that should be reviewed. But I think it is too early to kind of judge the decision made by the president in good faith, because I think the idea of easing or completely removing all visa requirement is positive. I welcome it. I think it is good for Kenya. It's good for Africa, but it should be done right. And I think we should separate between the policy decisions of the president and the bureaucratic, the systems implementation. I think Kenyans make a lot of mistakes because they go back to criticize the policy decisions made at the top without interrogating what could possibly have gone wrong and who is to blame. And I think this is perhaps an opportunity for us in our committee and elsewhere to review and look at how this thing has been implemented and whether we need to adjust or make changes to make it even easier and better for both the benefit of Kenya as well as for the visitors.
But it brings to question also the swiftness and quick off the mark the policy shifts that we have from government without due consideration, right? We've seen this happening. You're talking about even mulling over now, changing the mean grade of entry to university. So if there was no any tearing rush to come up with this decision of the visa-free requirement, and they will have gone through all the checks and processes that they wouldn't have any places where they can poke, their holes and try and also castigate it and raise questions about it. You see sentiments of some of anything to go by with
I think
some of the tourists here.
We should be realistic. We are a country in a hurry. We have done everything like that.
That's what we're saying. Microwave processing, microwave policy shifts.
Look at the evaluation. The devolution was one of the biggest decisions we've ever made. It. Do you know how long it took? I was in the 10th Parliament where we didn't have devolution. We had the election of 2013, and bang, in March, we evolved, we devolved. While in countries in the world, devolution has taken 20, 10 years to put into place. So we're a young and eager country, and a lot of things are done in a rush. But I don't disagree with the fact that, in fact, with the policy is right. The question is, what has gone wrong? Who is not doing what? And how can we adjust it so that it actually works for this country and for the visitors who are coming to Kenya? I think that is the big question. And I think that is more like a system problem rather than a policy issue.
All right, so it's the implementation bit that is a problem.
Yes.
All right, let's hear from Peter Kagwaja.
First, on devolution, I think we need to... Devolution as a system that we embraced took long time, from 1963. That's the debate we had. I remember publishing a small book for Frederick Ebert Foundation called The Shades of Federalism. And it was basically taking stock of all the thinking on federal kind of systems, or devolution for that matter, which now culminated in the Kibaki era. I think the problem with the devolution was implementation, because nobody ever went into looking at the policies that should help us run the devolution. And therefore, we've basically gone the microwaves way. There's no standardized forms. And I think one of the officers, my friend Mwangi, was heading the transition authority, from this to whatever. They did a great job, but within a very, very limited time. They needed more time to basically ground that. But that does not disqualify the point that Mheshimiwa is making, that we have actually become a microwave nation. And it's not a reputation you want to be identified with. It's a bad reputation, because it means that you cannot sit down and watch things mature. You can never ripen bananas, because they take time. And that's why you find we are even doubting the kind of food we are eating in the streets, whether it was properly cooked. Was this very cooked, or was it injected with some chemicals so that it cooked within hours? Was this, we have, all our mindset is now a microwave nation. And that now zeroes into the visa issue. As Mheshimiwa has rightly said, the idea of a visa-free country is the ideal of any nation. Yeah. Singapore doesn't have to talk about visa-free, because there are 192 countries in the world have given Singapore free visa. 192 out of 195 countries in the United Nations. So Singapore can just walk in, and anybody in reciprocal terms can also get into Singapore, because that's what they've done. But they have achieved this through very painstaking, attention to their economy, attention to their politics, attention to their culture and ethos. And therefore, even if you are culture-free, visa-free, you cannot bring drugs into Singapore, because they have policies that will deal with those people who bring drugs into the country. Even if you are visa-free, you cannot just go to Singapore and set a certain kiosk to start possibly, human trafficking for purposes of, sexual pressures and so on. You cannot do that, because they have systems already put in place to deal with that. The big question is, are we prepared in policy terms to deal with the consequences of a visa-free country? Do we have policies and the relevant structures in place to deal with the consequences of a visa-free environment? My answer is no, we don't.
Right.
I say no because in many cases we need to negotiate country by country, because countries have specific things that they add value to us. What we get from Uganda is not what we get from Somalia. What we get from Egypt is not what we get from Nigeria. So the visa reciprocity has much to do with our national interests. So back to my pet subject, that every policy that we undertake must always be guided by our national interests. And not every country, will give us the kind of national interest results that we want to have. So back to microwave nation. We've got to stop being a microwave nation.
Right. Let's just close it up with Dr. Hassan Kanyenja. Kanyenja, I don't know what will be also your outlook on this.
Much has been said, but I think building up on what Prof has mentioned, national interest should always guide our foreign policy and our engagement with other nations. There are countries that are going to contribute very little as a result of visa-free, entrance to Kenya. In theory and in principle, of course, allowing the rest of the world to be able to do business with you, to interact with you, and perhaps to enjoy our tourism is a fantastic idea. But I think one area, and to Lord Mheshimiwa's observations, is we already have certain arrangements with some countries. Today, if we decide, some of us would travel quite a bit into the region. When you go to Ethiopia, you don't need a visa. You don't. They charge you nothing. When you go to Djibouti, and AU is there and IGAD is in Djibouti, and so a lot of Kenyans who go there. In fact, a lot more Kenyans go there than actually those people who are coming from those countries to Kenya. Which means if they were to impose certain charges and fines on us, we're going to lose. We'll be exporting money, outside the country, as opposed to getting anything out of it. And so one of the things that has to be put in place as a matter of urgency is, what are we going to do with the countries that we already have an arrangement where we did not need a visa, neither did they, But then with of course, the additional processing fees, that is going to mean perhaps they may have to reconsider the fact that Kenyans, should not get a visa and perhaps impose it. So what can we do in the meantime to ensure actually that doesn't happen and that this policy is not ill-intended? Because if we don't communicate to them, then of course they're going to take action that is going to serve the national interest because they're not prepared to do that. But also, from a larger perspective, if you're going to have guests that are 200, but technically you accommodate 10, it means you're going to need infrastructure to be able to accommodate the 200 guests. Now, do we have a framework that is going to ensure we can accommodate the 195 or 205 territories around the world? Do we have mechanism to ensure we're going to be able to ensure that some elements that should not be here? Remember, in terms of organized crime, according to some study last year by ISS, Kenya was ranking very highly, number 4, actually. Is it number 4, 6 in Africa, number 4 in Africa, and 16 in the world. That is scary. That is scary. And this is data, and numbers don't lie. And so to the extent that already some people are seeing Kenya as a convenient conduit to conduct their affairs, how prepared are we to ensure that as we open up to the rest of the world, which in principle is a good thing, and especially in line with our Pan-Africanist kind of agenda, which the president has been advancing, is a good thing. But are we really ready to ensure that these elements are not going to harm us or to do harm to us, much less the existential threat we face from terrorist organizations, which can also actually exploit this kind of loopholes to do us harm. And so we really have to be honest with ourselves, realize that, well, this may, in principle, is something that is supposed to be good for the long term, but what do we need to do to ensure that we protect our citizens and advance our critical national interests? Right, and as a consideration, I think that will be the question that the committee will have maybe also probed deeply, the existential threat that is being raised here by Dr. Kanyenja. Have we probed that? Yes, it's a good thing that we're opening ourselves to the world. We have to take the smooth with the rough as well. So what about the rough of it?
Well, I think the committee obviously has a broad mandate to look at many things related to our foreign policy. But I also think that the issue of security could be overstated in the sense that, in fact, we know that terrorists do not use passport, do not seek visas to enter countries. They enter through our porous borders. And so it is more a security issue rather than a travel issue. But it is an important point to have at the back of our minds when we are introducing changes And I'm sure that in the consideration of the visa-free policy, security must have been discussed and put as a part of the equation. But I think we shouldn't overstate it, given the fact that they can come in anytime through any of the long borders that we share with a lot of our troubled neighbors. We are a peaceful island in the middle of a very rough sea. So obviously those are considerations that we should always have in mind, but it should not be an argument that should be used to discourage the approach to open our borders for those good people who want to come and do business, who want to come and visit our beautiful beaches and our national parks, or want to invest here.
All right, of course, and when we're talking about security, what about security in our studios? Because I want to just talk about what is happening in Ecuador right now, where masked gunmen broke into a live television studio in Ecuador and threatened terrified staff. Employees were forced on the floor during the broadcast by public television channel TC in the city of Guayaquil before the live feed cut out. The attackers were later seen leaving the studio, reportedly with several hostages. Police have made arrests. A 60-day state of emergency began in Ecuador on Monday after a notorious gangster vanished from his prison cell. It's unclear whether the incident at the TV studio in Guayaquil was related to the disappearance from a prison in the same city of the boss of the Coneros gang, although for Macias Valamar, or Rofito, as is better known. In neighboring Peru, the government ordered the immediate deployment of a police force to the border to prevent any instability crossing into the country. The US has said it condemns the brazen attack in Ecuador and is coordinating closely with President Daniel Noboa and his Ecuadorian government and stands ready to provide assistance. And that is sometimes what really happens. So we're safe and sound here in our studio, so don't worry. But it reflects on where we were at in 1982.
But Ecuador is a country that unfortunately is going through a serious destabilization.
Indeed.
And it used to be one of the most stable countries in South America. And when I lived in the United States, I had quite a number of Ecuadorian friends and colleagues, including the former president, Edward Correa. But it seems to be going through the same phase that Central America went through, of narco states, drugs, crime, gangsters have taken place. And in fact, in the last election, the leading presidential candidate was gunned down by a policeman, because even the police have been infiltrated by an order from a gang leader who is in prison, because the presidential candidate had said that one of his priorities would be to fight and eliminate the gang culture in the country. So they executed him and eliminated him from the process. So it's a very worrying trend, and I hope, I think African countries should be awake to the danger of narcotics becoming conduit or centers of production of narcotics. And many countries that have done that have fallen into instability, chaos, and mayhem.
I was just wondering if they have a visa-free entry into Ecuador as well. On a lighter note.
We need
That's a very extreme.
On a lighter note, I think we need to be worried about our Kamba. I think one of the visit by the ministries at some stage 2 years ago found that the most authentic Kambas now are in Ecuador. They went there as slaves, but has retained the Kamba culture, including the Kerumes and all that. Now, we need to be worried whether we need to evacuate them.
I thought the Kenyan coast was not affected by slavery. We stopped it.
So I want to connect this story to two things. One is the killing just before Christmas of Daniel Mudiani, a so-called sniper, who that case is underway. I don't want to speak too much about it because the investigations have led to the arrests of 9 suspects, and kudos to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and also I hope the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, that we will find out and get justice for the family of Daniel Mudiani. The killing of this, I guess, political commentator, very much like us, you know, who was involved in the campaigns last year. He was a social media activist in many ways, is a worrying sign, and it should not, and it's not so disconnected to what's happening in Ecuador. The Global Expression Report of 2023, this was a report that was done by Article 19, which looks at the extent to which press is operating in an enabling environment, whether journalists are free, whether they are not harassed or intimidated, finds that Kenya is 61 out of the School of Nations in terms of the freedom of the press. So we're not necessarily in the top 50. We are somewhere at the 61, but we are, I think, 11th in the continent of Africa. We're the only government, we're the only country in this region, in the East African region, that is declared, you know, that is designated as less restrictive, right? All our neighbors are in a different field altogether. They are restrictive or highly restrictive. And I think what's really important is, as we have this discussion, is just to recognize that freedom of expression is probably at its lowest, and this is what the report finds, it's at its lowest since 2000, the year 2000, last year. 80% of the 8 billion people live in highly restrictive or restrictive media environments. And I think that's why it is so important that as we move forward, the freedom of the media, the freedom of the right to express ourselves is maintained and protected, so that we do not have cases like Daniel Mudiani and others. You know, we now have cabinet administrative secretaries who were abducted and kidnapped for doing very much the same thing that Daniel Mudiani was doing, which essentially political commentary. If I can just mention Dennis Idumbi, who had this experience just before the elections. And there are others. More recently, we had Pauline Njoroge. It's very important that we keep the environment open for the freedom of expression.
Mm-hmm. And also just for the protection of the journalists as well and the media houses, as we can see it right now, when certain media houses seems to be taking a certain stand when it comes to a very heavily contested political season as well. That is also something that should be heavily considered. I don't see that.
But media houses can take their position as long as it's public. Fox News would align itself with certain conservative things, as long as we have clear ideological alignments.
But it depends also with, I don't know, can we call it the maturity of the populace as well, in terms of intolerance?
That's tolerance. Media is a leader, is a vanguard in protecting, these kind of things. Because when you are talking about the freedom of expression, the freedom of the media and the press, you're really saying that it's not about the individual, it's also about the institutions that protect this particular right. And therefore, if nations, for example, want to align with this, and standard media want to align with this, as long as they come out public, they are not being hypocritical. It's very clear. We know there are certain media houses during elections that openly sided with certain candidates. And that's okay. And the rival candidates knew that these are not with us. So you have your strategies of, again, exploiting that space without necessarily cramming down on their freedom. The problem we had in the 1980s and the 1990s was when there was, cram down on the media, that way. And also certain media aligning with the government, and the government, basically favoring the media. So it's something we need to give serious thought to in terms of expanding our democratic space, because that is what is at issue. It's our democratic space.
Thank you. Right, let's just come back now to the East African region, where Sudan has taken a diplomatic stance by recalling its ambassador from Nairobi in protest against Kenyan president. This is President William Ruto, or Ruto's hosting of talks with paramilitary commander Mohammed Hamadan Daglo according to Sudan's acting foreign minister. Daglo, whose rapid support forces have been in conflict with the regular army led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan since April, has been touring African capitals, including Uganda, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. Currently in South Africa, Daglo's travels have sparked tension with Burhan's administration, which seeks to deny international legitimacy to the paramilitaries. Sudan's acting foreign minister Al-Sadiq conveyed in a statement through the official Sudan news agency that the ambassador's recall was for consultations in protest of the official reception organized by the Kenyan government for the leader of a rebel militia. He added that the consultations will explore all possibilities for the outcome of Sudan's relations with Kenya. Tensions between Burhan and the Kenyan government have persisted, with Nairobi attempting to maintain communication with Daglo for potential mediation efforts in the conflict. In the January first address, the army chief cautioned that African governments hosting visits by this, what it terms, quote-unquote, these killers, were making themselves a partner in the murder of the Sudanese people. The ongoing war has claimed over 12,190 lives, as estimated by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, and displaced over 7 million individuals, according to UN figures. Mediation attempts remain stalled amid deep-seated animosity between the rival generals. Despite the Burhan's administration issuing statement as the Sudanese government, Daglo's rapid support forces controls key areas, including Khartoum, Darfur, and much of the Al Jazeera region, Sudan's pre-war bread basket. We want just to look at this developments here, and let me just begin with you, Dr. Hassan Kanenje. The recalling, what does it really portend? And we've seen this has been now toing and froing between Kenya and Sudan. Kenya being accused of actually taking a position as far as the situation is concerned there, and now it has come to a cropper. It has to recall its ambassador.
Yeah, there seems to be no love lost between Khartoum and Nairobi, assuming that Burhan is the current, still the current leader in Khartoum, and it's been going on, of course, since last year. I think it emerged from the Sudan's perceived closeness of Nairobi to RSF, which may or may not exactly be true, but those perception has informed a lot of Al-Burhan's reactions. But it was also, contributed to by some of the statements that were made by people in government who did not necessarily represent Kenya's position, for instance, but the fact that some politicians were making comments that seemed to be demeaning, the leadership of Sudan. I think it fueled the fires, and that is why a lot of us on this panel cautioned that if you don't have competence to comment on Sudanese conflict, please just stop, because it was complicating Kenya's efforts to mediate or at least to intervene in that conflict. Now, the recalling, of course, of the ambassador, it's not just because Kenya held talks with the RSF leader. Remember, Hemedi has been to Ethiopia, has been to Uganda, has been to Djibouti, and has been to South Africa in terms of his latest diplomatic move. And part of it is also for him to show up support for the upcoming, talks, in Djibouti, which of course Al-Burhan is still resisting. But one of the things, and we know that Kenya has been not been as aggressive, especially in its rhetoric, and has kind of ceded, some of the initiatives, of course, to IGAD, rightly so, and not make it a Kenyan process, but mostly it's an IGAD process, because Kenya was elected or was picked by IGAD, to lead that process. Now, of course, this doesn't exactly bode well, for the conflict in Sudan. But we also understand that Al-Burhan has suffered a lot of losses. As we speak, RSF just captured the second largest city of White Madani, and that is putting increasing pressure, on the government in Khartoum and on Al-Burhan to perhaps make concessions. And I think he thinks if the talks were to start right now, he may not be having a very strengthened hand, considering the successes that RSF has reached on the ground. But of course, Nairobi also needs to do more with regard to continued diplomacy within the region as well as internationally to ensure that some of these distractions they're not going to affect, of course, the process, because the move by Khartoum, it's meant to legitimize RSF, and it is mad that some countries are giving it credibility that it shouldn't be having. But the things on the ground, of course, are saying different, because RSF de facto is perhaps occupying half of Sudan, as we speak, in terms of strategic, importance of the regions, and increasingly has been making success. Now, this is not to say they're doing, they're any better. Of course, they've also been accused of committing a lot of crimes. We know of the history, of course, of RSF with, of course, the Janjaweed movement and the like. But you don't deal with what you wish you have. You have to deal with the parties that exist. And today, as we speak, right now, the main protagonists are RSF and the Sudanese armed forces, led by Hemedi and Burhan. And so ultimately, al-Burhan will still have to come to the negotiating table if this conflict has to be resolved, because on the ground, he doesn't seem to be gaining much ground, even though still is recognized as the legitimate leader of Sudan. But the ground, of course, it means if he doesn't make concessions, the Sudanese people are going to suffer. And there's a likelihood that, of course, the Sudanese armed forces may even register more losses, which is going to limit his ability to negotiate and get a better deal in the eventual talks that are supposed to take place.
Right. So we're talking about also the rising cases of where we have, of course, humanitarian aid, and aid workers there being overwhelmed to give essential services at the camps as it is right now. Maybe you can just give us the current state of play from the Amnesty International perspective of the crisis that is bedeviling Sudan right now.
So I guess 4 reflections. The first is that the situation in South Sudan in many ways has correctly been called the forgotten conflict. As our eyes were on Ukraine and more recently the occupied Palestinian territories, you've seen just a crisis of violence and conflict in the context of Sudan. With 12,000 dead, 7 million people displaced, 1 in 3 food insecure, 1 in 10 on the run. It is the biggest child displacement, episode currently in the world today, right? So this is the context in which it is, and both the RSF and the defense forces have the army have been accused by many governments and the international community of human rights violations and war crimes. We closed the year with Secretary Blinken essentially determining that genocide had taken place. Now, many of us asked, how is it possible that you can come to this conclusion in the context of Sudan, perhaps rightly so, given, for example, the 100 people that were massacred in November in a place called Adamata, the Masalit people, and not come to the same conclusion in terms of what's happening in Gaza. But maybe that's another conversation that we could develop. So I think the situation is dire. We closed the year with the IGAD talks in disarray. I think Haninja has said this, and therefore the need to kickstart these conversations is really important. There is a delicacy that comes with where we've reached in terms of negotiations. We can applaud the government of Kenya for continuing to engage this process. It is important not just because they are a regional neighbor, but because of the weight of humanity that essentially is being threatened by the violence that we see there. So I think that would be the 3 comments that I would want to make. The 4th one, perhaps, is really thinking about, how does Kenya position in a way in which it remains trusted by the 2 major parties in this process. And maybe a 3rd party, which is not on, is often forgotten, is that these are 2 military formations. They are not civilian formations. So there is a democratic political process that is still nowhere really on the table yet. How does Sudan return to a civilian, democratic, governed state? And unfortunately, both RSF and the armed forces are not capable of producing those conditions. It has to be done in a multi-stakeholder negotiation process that cedes military control to political civilian authority.
And Peter Kagwenju, you can see that, of course, the confirmation bias seems to also be filtering through this, that Kenya still is deemed to be one-sided, as you put it. We have taken sides, and so when any perception, even if it's a good gesture visit to our country from Hemedith, it seems that there is maybe an ulterior motive that is accompanied with that particular visit. How then do we shake off this hang-up that we still have as being biased?
I think on this particular case, we are unfair to William Ruto. William Ruto received, the Burhani in State House, and there were good talks and a lot of media splash of the same. William Ruto received Hamdok, yes, the former Prime Minister of that country, this year, and he has received Emedit. And I don't know whether the expectation was that Emedit should not come here or that. But how can you be a mediator of people you've not met? And if anybody who knows the president will know that he's warm-hearted. I mean, in particular in the public gesture, he greets you, the African way, shake you nicely and call you brother or my friend. This is it. So I did not see a lot of business calling Dagaro my brother, my friend, because that's what he does even to Kenyans and to other heads of states and friends outside there.
And so, even political opponents.
Even political opponents like Raila Odinga. This is my brother, Raila Odinga, my friend, Uhuru Kenyatta. So this is him. So they should have studied that. But the objective reality is that on this particular matter, I think President Ruto is on the money. Why do I say so? Any analyst will tell you that Dagaro is going to emerge the winner of this particular war. So it's not hedging for a country like Kenya that is going to be relevant in Sudan. You have to weigh to put your weight on matter that's likely to help the country. That does not that you obliterate the military, but Burhani himself did not manage the transition effectively. Now, the objective condition for the purpose of Kenyans and those who are studying the military and the conflict in the region is as follows. That Dagaro knew that he would be a victim as soon as Bashir left power. Because when that rapid support force was formed, it was directly in the hands of Bashir and the intelligence. And therefore, the architecture of the military of Sudan at that time was a triangle. Bashir, Dagaro, and the military, Burhani. Now, when the Burhani removed Bashir under pressure from the civilians, what happened? He exposed himself, and Dagaro moved very, very quickly to strengthen his position, and did it so well that you can never fault him on that. He put 40,000 troops in Yemen, other troops in Libya, other troops in Chad, acquired technology, and now his force is larger than the official military. It is better trained and better battle hardened. What do you expect from that kind of a thing? He's capturing city after city. We're not complaining for him, but we started Angola. So there are situations that don't lend themselves to negotiated solution, but render themselves to battleground victory. And Sudan is one of those. In Sudan, take my word, the solution is not negotiation. It is battleground victory. Right. The big question therefore becomes, how do we return Sudan to the civilians? Is Dagaro willing to return Sudan to the civilians if he emerges as a winner? Already he's a winner in that country because Burhan can't go far. So let's put it that way, that for the first time, I think our president has his hand in the money in this particular case.
Right. The clock is ticking up to 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock on the nose. We want to take a short break right now. But also when we circle back, we shall be looking at this particular editorial cartoon of South Sudan, as it is, not really South Sudan, but Somalia. Where is it? It's eluding me, but I'll show you on the other side of a break. We'll just get the sentiments of Yusuf Hassan on Sudan as well. But Ethiopia and Somalia tension also is brewing. They held military cooperation talks with Somaliland. We shall be probing that.